Welcome. Welcome. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
being
Sure.
on Technology of Self. Thank you for the space in
Mhm.
your location. Yeah, we're here to talk to Les Kalman. This is called Healing Minds by the Bay, a journey with Dr. Les Kalman. Um, so, welcome to Technology of Self. We're a human evolution podcast, and I'm your host, V Love Van Kosteren. We are here to have a discussion about the state of human health and wellness, where we're at and where we're going and where it's been, and the state of the art, tools and techniques and medicines, and what Dr. Les Coleman has experienced. So today we're privileged to be at his beautiful home in the Bay Area overlooking the bay in the serene San Francisco Bay. It's pretty windy today. So thank you, Les, for welcoming us into your space.
Mhm.
So you often telecommute as a doctor of medicine specializing in psychiatry.
Right.
Dr. Les Coleman is also known as the mobile doc of the Bay, and he provides services to mental health patients with over 35 years of experience treating mental health patients in the San Francisco Bay Area, with a rich education background that includes a doctorate in medicine, specializing in psychiatry, a doctorate in psychology, two master's degrees in clinical and counseling psychology, and a bachelor's in history. Dr. Coleman is a pillar of psychiatric care in the San Francisco Bay Area. To me, you are. His extensive work spans across crisis units, refugee spaces, courts, geriatrics, prisons, and on location mobile treatment. And you've been making a significant impact on people's lives through helping them when they're in emergency in their mental health. So we're here to ask you questions about this experience with
Sure.
35 years experience
Fire away.
in psychiatry and 8 years as a clinical psychologist as well, right?
Mhm.
So what inspired you to become a psychiatrist and be involved in psychiatry and psychology?
Well, it started out in psychology. In graduate school, I just found that my personality gravitated towards curiosity about people, their emotional state, and um, and it just expanded from there. So I had the personality for it, and I just needed the skills, which I got through academia.
And how did you have the personality for it?
Just that empathic kind of feeling what that person is going through, being with that person emotionally, and and then guiding or helping to explore what is going on, what are the antecedents of whatever is happening, and to go forward from there. That's the psychological element.
Mhm.
But since then, after going back to medical school, uh, it changed more to the medical model,
Mhm.
which entail dealing with symptoms.
Okay. So I have so many questions, and we can flop around, or I can just kind of go a little bit here. So, since you've seen so many people and so many symptoms of where people are having trouble sometimes in their lives, either in their environments or in their personal internal space, what are some of the stories of people's real turnarounds that you've seen, like some real recovery stories that you've experienced?
That would have been in the psychological realm,
Mhm.
and that's been decades.
Okay.
So the changes I've seen have been a result of medications
Mhm.
and the evolution of the medications. Uh, since the 80s, late 80s, things have really evolved in psychiatry. terms of that, in terms of dealing with uh, schizophrenia and as well as with affective uh, components like bipolar or major depression.
Mhm.
So I think that that's been the major uh, change and development in psychiatry.
Mhm.
Is the medication and the more specific area of the brain that it affects without affecting other regions of the brain, thus decreasing side effects and enhancing efficacy in terms of the symptoms presented.
So these conditions that you mentioned, schizophrenia, depression, and
Bipolar.
bipolar,
Mhm.
these are a kind of imbalance in the brain or in the biochemistry of the being.
Right.
And so how does that imbalance get there? How do people get into that space where they're not entirely functional? Like, because when they come to you, it's more like they're already in emergency state, right? More or less.
Right.
Mhm.
Especially the last dozen or so years, that's where I've been focusing on.
Right. So you focus on the county, but you also had the mobile treatment.
Right. But all of that is essentially kind of crisis mode, and it's generally just a one-time seeing the patient. So
Mhm.
I don't have the longitudinal uh, aspects that I had earlier in other settings.
Right.
So these would be people that I would see once and
Mhm.
likely not again.
Right. So you're just there when they're in crisis.
Right.
And so you're just seeing really intense situations, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So would you say in your 35 years of helping people in crisis in these multiple spaces, and has crisis increased or
Yeah.
the state of people's mentality, has it changed?
So, Um, well, likely just simply because the population has expanded, so hence, so did the mental disorders. Statistically, I'm not really sure, but I would suspect that it remains pretty much the same.
Mhm.
But the volume has increased because there's more people.
Right.
And also, how it occurred or the ideology would be multifactorial. Genetics plays a role, and there's not much you can do on that.
Mhm.
And then environment, and drugs, and medical, especially head traumas. Um, so it's multifactorial in
Mhm.
terms of the dysfunction. And then you kind of tweeze it out and try to deal with the elements that you can have an impact on.
Mhm.
And the literature definitely supports the combination of medication with therapy is the best way to deal with any kind of emotional
Mhm.
distress.
Right, right. So, right. And so when you say environment, that's what you mean by like emotional distress, like in a home or in a space that they're in, or
Right,
Mhm.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, or in their internal environment. So environment could be
Or traumas,
Mhm.
past traumas that continue to manifest in one way or another.
through the perception of their minds.
Yeah, and then
Mhm.
the way they react to it, generally it would be dysfunctional, otherwise you wouldn't be seeing them.
Right. So we were talking before, and we're talking about what these states of dysfunction are, and we were talking about how people might, continually have what you call imbalance, and your aim is to get people into balance, but a lot of these people might not have recognized that they were out of balance until it was really intense or until it affected people, or so then that's when they come to you. So that's what we were discussing before. What would you say that people who are out there in the world that they might want to recognize in themselves or in their community or their environment if there is imbalance or dysfunction? Because I think a lot of people out in the world might not know that this dysfunction is actually, it can be helped.
It's again, these are people that either come in voluntarily because of emotional distress
Mhm.
or in the crisis center or in a crisis type of setting, they're usually brought in by police or uh, EMS or
Wow.
somebody calling and
Mhm.
saying that their loved one or somebody that they know is having a problem, an issue, and then be
Mhm.
brought in, um, and evaluated to determine how severe the condition is. Um, and if so, then they would need to be hospitalized.
Mhm.
So basically, that's what I do. I determine, just like in an emergency room, when you go in there, if it's pretty bad, they'll admit you and send you up into their hospital.
Right.
If they can treat you right there, then they would do that. And so, yeah, we can medicate them and allow them to kind of recover from this acute crisis situation, and
Mhm.
then refer them for further outpatient treatment.
Right.
Generally, that would be the follow-up
Mhm.
in this setting would be community mental health centers,
Right.
and we have social workers that would interview them after they've been seen by me, and
Once you have an
recommendations,
assessment, right?
right?
Mhm.
And then know they can go from there. People need help with social services, such as housing, or help with forms to fill out for social security,
Mhm.
other forms of aid. Uh, the social services would deal with that.
That's really nice to know that there's people out there to help people that are in crisis. Because sometimes people are just don't know where to turn. They're not in the right society or the right people or the right home, whether it's their family or, their chosen friends and family or, and when you're in that situation, I think a lot of times they don't know what the choice is. And when people like you and the county and the social services support people in getting into a new space, I, it's really beautiful. Like to me, it's like I was just crying about that today because I just got a little bit of support, and um, a lot of people don't even realize that they can be supported or that that's even safe to be supported. So can you tell me a little bit about the assessment and what do you assess in the people and how do you help them feel supported and trusted as much as you can or your students or the people your coworkers to help these people that are in crisis know that they're actually being supported.
Mhm. Well, yeah, basically it would start with an interview and then it depends on how cooperative they are.
Mhm.
Um, Also, the element of being in an altered state, such as under the influence of drugs or alcohol,
Mhm.
would have an effect. And so it really might just be a temporal thing where they would be observed in that crisis setting. Um, the first things that you want to rule out is if they're a danger to themselves or to others, or if they're greatly disabled, they're
Mhm.
unable to really come up with a urgent or clear plan of finding shelter, food, clothing, safety, basically.
Right.
If any of those boxes are checked, then
Mhm.
uh, likely you would go for hospitalization.
Mhm.
If it's if none of those are there, um, then you want to rule out any substance use that would have an effect, uh,
Mm.
causing hallucinations or delusions or mood swings. Uh, and so we do a drug screen on everybody to determine if that might be the factor that brought them in here.
Yeah.
Other elements that we look at in the crisis center are any past history of mental illness and other medications, and then any medical history.
Mhm.
So the more information we're able to glean, the better our decision making will be.
I can imagine the stories and the people that you've seen because you've been in mobile dock of the bay and you would go to different areas of different places where people were in need. Did that include the homeless or was that more like you said refugees? Can you tell me a little bit about your van and where you would go and who you would help?
Yeah, I kind of created that. I took a
Yeah.
van, converted it into an office, and
Mhm.
I signed up to help Social Security travel to rural areas of Northern California or go
Wow.
to people's homes that are not ambulatory or emotionally don't leave the house, panic
Mhm.
disorder, agoraphobia. And so I would go out there to them.
Mhm.
But this was requested by social services by the state of California.
Mhm.
So I would set it up. They would send me all the information about each of the people that I would be meeting, and I would call them uh, personally and set up a date and time and location to meet.
Mhm.
Generally, when I go to the far reaches out there, like Eureka, Wairika,
Oh.
etc., then I would set it up to meet several people in a neutral location, like a park or something like that, and I would tell them to look for the van, and I had license plate mobile MD.
Oh, wow.
And so they knew uh, where to go,
Yeah.
and they greatly appreciated that I would go to them rather than they having to go to a regional center, which could be located hundreds of miles away.
Wow. Yeah. So these people are, yeah, California is huge and there's a
Mhm.
lot of land and people way out there and a little bit
Right,
on the outback
right.
situation. And when I had a friend who had to leave her land recently because the people around her were not safe.
Hmm.
So, and that was, rural California kind of situation. So I can totally imagine that these people were really grateful to experience that.
Mhm.
And did you go by yourself or did you feel you felt safe? You felt okay?
Well, no, there were some harrowing times.
Mhm.
I sometimes I went by myself. Sometimes I had a nurse come along.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be much more
Yeah,
helpful.
that kind of helped. But
Mhm.
yeah, either way, I mean, whatever worked, however we were able to schedule.
Mhm.
Um, so it involved me wearing multiple hats, including the psychiatrist, the chauffeur, the scheduler, and pretty much everything in between.
I'm sitting here going, guard, guard, guard. Maybe you didn't need to have a guard at that time.
No,
Yeah.
no, I didn't. I
Mhm.
don't know how wise that was, but
Yes.
would nothing
That you,
happened in all those
yeah.
years.
But people were grateful that you helped them. Mhm.
By and large, I mean, you really never know what to expect.
Mhm.
Um, there was one lady that I saw all the way up in South Lake Tahoe who was so paranoid about somebody coming in a van actually to her home that she called the state, then she called the National Social Security in Washington, D.C. I mean, went all the way to the top about, some stranger's going to come and doesn't know what's going on. And then it trickled back down until say, yeah, this is legitimate. There is this doctor who travels and goes and reassured her. And yeah, she was very paranoid.
And did you end up helping her?
Um, I like to think so.
Yeah.
You know, I can talk with them. I can reassure them.
Mhm.
I can strongly suggest that they try some medication,
Mhm.
but I can't force them.
Right.
So
Mm.
I go as far as I can go.
Mhm. So in the assessment, you look at like how people are looking and feeling, like where their eyes are going, like the state of their body, the state of their like what kind of their states
I
to
mean, like nonverbal cues.
from nonverbal to verbal. Yeah, what you
Whatever they feel comfortable sharing with me,
Mhm.
and I don't push it
Mhm.
if especially if they're wary and guarded, suspicious,
Paranoid.
then I don't want to push any of those buttons. I try to be as non-threatening.
Right.
I'll ask questions, and if they decline to answer, or no, no, what do you want to know that for, kind of thing. Just to get to know you better, to understand where you're coming from. If they still feel uncomfortable, then we drop it. And then
Yeah.
some of the questions I've created like a 5-page psychiatric evaluation form.
Mhm.
Because another thing that I do is I teach medical students, third and fourth year medical students, who are rotating in psychiatry. And so it's a good learning tool for them.
Mhm.
So there are many questions on this 5-page questionnaire that are a little sensitive, personal, family history of mental illness, for example, or
Mhm.
question any kind of abuse or growing up, that kind of stuff. They can get very defensive, or they could break down and cry and talk about some of their experiences. And then there's questions about their drug use or drug history. Get a little squeamish about that. So there are a lot of sensitive questions. Legal history is
Mhm.
also there, and they may not want to talk about any of that either.
But the assessment is to get to know them so you can help them
Right, exactly.
come into balance.
And I do introduce it as such. That
Mhm.
this is just so that I can understand where you're coming from, uh, and you can go from there. But by the same token, if they don't feel comfortable talking about any particular segment of that evaluation, okay,
Yeah.
and we just move on.
Mhm. So you're basically there to help in the crisis mode to help them get from this out of balance state to a more imbalanced state, and you prescribe if you find the need. So what is the intention of the prescriptions when you do prescribe something to someone?
Well, I mainly want them to pursue mental health services through their county.
Mhm.
Every county has a crisis unit.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm just catalyst, someone that can direct them,
Yeah.
in the right direction.
Yeah.
I can do that through, yeah, either prescribing or encouraging. Um, Mainly the latter, uh, because since there's no follow-up, um, it's not a good idea to start someone on medication if they would take it anyway, because you'd never know.
Mm.
So it's mainly uh, a couple of things. One is that the interview in and of itself,
Mhm.
which can take about an hour-ish, depending on the scenario,
Mhm.
um, has a cathartic effect because they're able uh, to talk about issues that are maybe very sensitive and they haven't talked about it with anybody.
Right.
And now they have the opportunity.
Mhm.
So there's that cathartic element. Um, and the empathy that you're kind of with that person. That's from my psychology training,
Yeah.
uh, and non-threatening and encouraging
So encouraging them, what would you encourage, for instance?
to follow up with the crisis.
That social services.
Right,
Mhm.
right, and
Mhm.
then it's all documented. What I do is I transcribe that entire report
Mhm.
and submit it in that scenario to Social Security, to the people that requested the
Mhm.
evaluation. In the
Mhm.
other settings, in the crisis settings, the notes are also utilized for the next person or the outpatient psychiatrist to follow up so that they have a foundation, a basis on with which to work.
Okay. So you're like the pivot point almost, like you're the spark of potential new space because you're called in when people are at that point in their lives where things are shutting down or shifting or changing, or what are some of the situations that are have happened to people that where they really need you to come in, if you're able to talk about that.
Okay. These are generated by other uh, institutions.
Yeah.
Um, if, for example, we're talking about Social Security,
Mhm.
then these were people that were applying for Social Security disability because of mental illness or emotional distress.
Mhm.
So that's how that got going. In the crisis setting, it's because family member or somebody called the police because the person was behaving erratically. So I don't determine,
Yeah.
I don't start this.
Yeah.
I just,
Just go in.
the next cog, if you will.
Yeah. Well, you're like the assessment that helps them get further help.
Right,
Mhm.
right. So I might be the first professional to see them
Mhm.
and then to direct them in a direction which I think will help them.
Okay. We would really like, I'm just so interested because you have so much experience. You've worked with so many different kinds of people. Right now you're working in prisons. You've worked with
No, no, no,
no.
not in the prison. I retired from the state
Oh,
many
okay.
years ago.
Oh, you did. Okay.
I worked 8 years in the prison setting.
Okay. That must be quite a story as well.
Um, yeah, it's different.
Yeah. Would you say that a lot of people there are in need?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
Um, but once again, it's an unusual setting. They're a captive audience, no pun intended.
Right.
So
Okay.
in that setting, we did see them every day, actually,
Okay.
uh,
Mhm.
as a treatment team, uh,
Mhm.
with the nurse, and with, as a psychologist, a couple of guards. It'd be a kind of a room full of people.
So, how do you keep yourself in good state within yourself when you see so much trauma and pain and dysfunction in society?
Well, yeah, you stay with the person in the moment,
Mhm.
but after that, you have to divorce yourself from that. You just get away. Uh, my escape, if you will,
Mhm.
or outlet was exercise. So I would exercise all the time.
Hmm.
Uh, Earlier, I used to play a lot of football, and
Right.
that helped a lot. And then I used to write comedy and jokes and things like that, and that also helps me separate from all that angst. If you get involved in it and you can't let it go after the day, then you're gonna be pretty worthless. So you have to learn to just separate yourself
Yeah.
afterwards.
And not take on other people's challenges as much as you would love to help them, and you do help them. Um, I understand. I can understand that now, but I did not understand that before. And I think that, as a culture, a lot of people might be, if it's in their family, they're involved in wanting to get to support the people, to be in a better space.
Mhm.
Um, so it's exhausting for anyone, and if you're seeing any these people all the time,
Right.
wow.
Like being a caregiver. Caregiver is a very challenging uh, occupation.
Right. So we're talking about holistic approach, the integral approach. So, and you were saying earlier that um, now we're talking about sports and your sports and how you've helped let go and maintain your stability with seeing all these challenging cases. So, and when people go from being with you in crisis or social services, and then you assess them and you support them in whether they need medication or further support, whether it be therapy. Do you also ever, in your encouragement, also encourage holistic space because you know it well in yourself? I know you told me about this before that you really.
Yeah, right, that's what kind of motivated me to go to medical school was that concept of holistic medicine combining psychology, exercise, and nutrition, and then medicine. Um, so that was kind of my motivation back then.
Yeah. Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, so since then, once again, I can't. I can suggest things to people. I can make recommendations, but ultimately, it's up to the individual.
Mhm.
Um, and lately, I've seen a lot of uh, drugs being a significant factor in mental illness and cancer. And earlier question, yeah, I
Yeah.
have seen a rise in mental illness. So
Oh,
the
okay.
first step is that uh, to show them that basically what they're doing is they're trying to self-medicate, but in a very self-defeating manner. So I could send the messages and with some authority based on my education and background, but I can't force them
Right.
to do so. And the social services can also provide resources, help them with housing, help them with drug rehab programs. But ultimately, it's up to the individual to take those steps.
So you made a good point here of people that, there's been a rise in mental illness due to drugs. And I'm very able to see it, but but I feel like it's a rise. And so, but your point is that these people are trying to self-medicate. And so, I mean, why do you think they're trying to self-medicate for one?
Because it feels better than to actually try to face or deal with whatever the demons are.
Their inner
Escape, yeah. I mean, usually it's almost a knee-jerk reaction, fight or flight from any kind of distress. That's your sympathetic nervous system kicking in.
Mhm.
So these are people generally, and these are broad generalizations. Every story is different,
Yeah.
but basically, that this is their way of escaping the situation
Mhm.
or whatever the stressors are. And we're bombarded with stressors all the time, and then people react differently to different stressors, and their breaking points at various settings. So, uh, one way of not having to confront or deal with would be by altering your conscious level using drugs.
Right. So escape, altering your reality,
Mhm.
getting away from stress,
Yeah, at
or
least for the time being.
yeah,
Ultimately, of course, it comes back to bite them because things get worse. And then, of course, if you keep running away, nothing gets done. And so the issues keep mounting, and then the stressors keep mounting. It's a vicious cycle.
right. Yes, yes. So, and so why, you also made another good point, and I just to advance on that or expand on that. So you're saying that they're trying to self-medicate to shift these stressors, or get away from something or expand
Mhm.
their reality or whatever their reason is. But this in the end, it changes the chemical balance
Mhm.
inside. And then, so you're seeing a lot of people in your crisis space, in their crisis spaces, or when and you see them when they're in crisis, and drugs are often inducing it or creating an imbalance. So, how would you tell any people who may be doing this to themselves, and or how you would treat some patients to encourage them to get better support, and that there are other ways to actually support them, because you were saying that perhaps they were, you know, doing the drugs for an imbalance or a trauma that they already had or a life stressor, but there are other ways to deal and handle with these stressors. And this is what the social services and what you are here for. So how can they better handle their stressors, and how can you support that? How can social services support that? How can the people in the world here in the US and hopefully other places in the world be helped through services such as yours?
Mhm. Okay, well, once again, it's the intensity or level of the dysfunction, if you will,
Mhm.
that would determine what the next step might be.
Mhm.
So, if, for example, we're dealing with a drug use as the cause of whatever situation, hallucinations, delusions, depression,
Mhm.
mania, then first step is, of course, to stop the drugs. And there is most crisis units, actually pretty much all of them, have what's known as a partial hospitalization unit. So
Mhm.
this would be like the next step. It would not be total hospitalization. It would just be, as known denotes, partial, temporarily let them kind of dry out. Is it?
Or detox
A
or
detox,
Mhm.
yes, or whatever.
Mhm.
Um,
And then be watched to make sure that they're doing okay. Because if
yeah,
they've been doing a lot,
right,
then
right.
yeah.
Absolutely. And so the partial hospitalization unit would be apropos for that
Mhm.
type of setting and this type of people.
Okay.
And then during that time, the staff in those partial hospitalization units would be encouraging them to uh, further their rehab by going into a rehabilitation program,
Mhm.
which they could set up for them.
And there are public programs for this.
Right.
Okay.
There are,
Mhm.
there's both public and private.
Right. Okay. So a lot of the people, for instance, I used to go to school in San Francisco, and it was, walking along Market or Mission Street like every day, and there's all these people there, and I used to live in South Market, and it ended up being tents all around, and things like this. So a lot of these people, they could potentially get some rehab or.
Yeah, they could.
Mhm.
I've actually walked those streets as well.
Mhm.
I've gone into the shelters and have conducted psychiatric evaluation
Mhm.
because they've applied, or somebody on their behalf has applied for Social Security. So I've been in there, and
Mm.
we once again, if they're motivated, then that would be the next step.
Mm.
So there's a paper trail now,
Okay.
and hopefully get them off the streets and into program.
That's so beautiful to know. I think like a lot of people probably don't know or don't trust. The people that are on the streets might not know or might not trust, but the people that are walking the streets that are not in that space, like me going to school, I'm just like, what's going on with these people? Why are they not getting help? It's about their motivation, whether they want the help and finding it, trusting it,
Mhm.
gaining it, and reclaiming their life
Right.
in a way that
Yeah.
they can redream their life or
Sure.
recreate it.
Yeah, ideally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's really beautiful to know that that's an option for a lot of these people.
Oh, well, it always is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love to that this is being recorded right now because I think a lot of people don't know.
Hmm.
Like really, they don't know, or if they do know, then they don't trust.